So I'm carving a spiral like this. In the last video we talked about how to lay it out. And here's one that's the square block, about 1 inch square by about 6 inches long. And I made a mark here about 1 inch to 1 1/4 at the top. And then I laid out my spiral. So the first thing I'm going to do is get on a glove, because this is a small carving, and of course you should wear a glove whenever you're carving anything where you're holding the work in your hand. But really on a project like this, where it gets down to a very small area that you're carving, you really need protection. So I can, whatever I'm going to do here on the top, I'm just going to round this off as a ball, so I can always just start with this. Rounding this off a little bit. And I'll just continue to kind of take off corners here. I'll take 1 or 2 cuts and then I rotate it, and that helps me to keep it even. Now if I was really worried about this, I could have scribed a diagonal. I probably should do this before I start carving. Make a diagonal, that way I have a center here. Okay, and then I'm going to be carving to that center line, so that way the rounded end of this doesn't go too out of whack. Okay, so you don't have to watch me carve this. This is just rounding off the end of it, and I'm going to extend this all the way down till I get to my my zero line here. And I can see I'm running out of battery on my camera, so I'm going to try to... Okay, my battery died, so I'm back to where I was. Anyway, I finished rounding the top. Okay, so right now it's just kind of a starting point. I don't know what I'm going to do with that later, and then eventually these corners will be taken off and it'll round into it. You can see on this finished one how it rounds itself off. So, well, I round it off carving it. Okay, so I have a couple ways I can approach the carving now. I want to basically make a series of V cuts where these lines are, right on these corners like this, and I'll do it at each one. I want my cut to go right at the deepest point, right to the line. Okay. I'm going to repeat this all the way down, and then I'll make each one a little deeper. Okay. Once I've done that on all of my corners, and I want to go fairly deep on that, because what I'm going to do then is carve off, this corner so I can round my spiral. I want it to be a cone shape, not a pyramid shape. You can also preserve the flat on this and keep it a 4-corner thing, and that's actually a very interesting shape too. And if you're using it as a Christmas ornament, you can keep that shape. But I want to round it, so I'm doing that. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I want to connect these. I'm going to connect this notch to this notch. Now, a couple ways I can do it. One way I can do is to make a series of slicing cuts like this, which is a little bit more challenging way to do it. Flip it around and have my cut meet. I probably should be wearing a thumb guard. Okay. So I want to connect my corners, and the best way is to make a cut down the line to connect the 2 notches. I can also come in this way with it, make a deeper cut, and you have to be a little careful to control that. I can do it that way, and just go right down, just come in about maybe 1/8 or 1/16, and you're better off to make a couple of cuts. In order to keep this even, I want to come in at about the same angle and come in from about the same distance on either side of the line. Another way I could do that is I could use a V tool, Here's a little bit bigger one, and this is a little rounded on the bottom, but I can just come down the middle of my line like this. This is where you got to have the glove. Okay. Now this is just to get it started. Eventually I want to have a hard corner on the bottom, not a rounded one, so I would use more of a hard V-tool like this. So even if I were to do it with the knife, I could always clean it up with the V-tool. Okay, here's one that I have most of the spirals started. Okay, and I did these with a knife, and then I clean them up a little bit with the V-tool like this, just to get them. It's just a little bit easier way to do it. You can't really, it's hard to use the V-tool on the corner. That's the only problem, but you can use it on the flat part. Okay, and so now I've established all my spirals, but I still have flat planes, and kind of, if I look at it this way, I still have, it's not round. So the next thing I want to do is kind of break these corners off. And what I'm going to do is, I'm doing just a short little cut like this, a very controlled cut. My the knife that has the hand that has the knife, that thumb is against the thumb that's holding the work. Okay, and I'm just pivoting like this. And then what I'm doing is, with my left hand, which is holding the carving, I'm kind of rocking it back and forth. So I kind of establish a round shape, and I'm not really making the knife go around the circle, I'm making the piece and I start to get a rounded shape. So, and then eventually I will fade that into this halfway point. If I have a halfway mark from here down to this point, and I connect those down the center, and I have it over here on the center, then when I round it, I basically want to start in the corner, okay, and work my way to that line with a smaller and smaller and smaller cut, with my deepest one being here. And then I can come back. So I can start very light, go heavier to the heaviest point in the middle, and then out. Okay? And then if I do that on all four sides, that will help guide me to getting a rounder shape. Okay, so I'm starting with the knife right at this line, very lightly. Again, I'm turning the work, I'm not turning the knife. And I go heavier in the middle, and then I go light at the end. Okay, so here I'm doing the same concept, but I'm going toward me. Again, it's a controlled thing I have. Right here's my pivot. Very controlled cut. It's only going to go that far. Very little chance of slipping and cutting myself, because I'm just hardly moving the knife. I'm just moving just this little bit right here, pivoting this and turning the work with my hand to get my round. Okay, now as I get closer to my hand here, I just move this farther up. Alright, when I get down to the point where I feel like I don't have enough to hold on to on this one, I can just turn it around. In fact, it's better to hold on to this fat end the whole way. So if I want to go down toward the tip, I can carve away from me. If I want to go the other way, I can turn it toward me, depending on which way the grain dictates. All of these four sides, if you keep going deep enough into the carving, you'll meet, and then you'll have it, it'll open up for you like this. Okay? Once you start breaking through, that's when you got to be really careful, because it's not supported. This one still has support. If I squeeze this, there's support because there's still material in here. This one is very flexible and can easily crack. This is all short grain here. Okay, so that's it. I will keep rounding these until I get it the way I want it. I'll decide whether or not I want to go through. I can sand it. I can leave it carved the way it is. I kind of like the way this one is. I'll just smooth up some of the high spots on this. Then I'll do a very light 320 grit sanding, and then I'll put some finish on it, and then it'll be all done. So that's it for this project. Enjoy. And I hope yours turns out well, and I hope you have a good time carving it. And as I said with any of the other carvings, you can always increase the level of difficulty by doing these in different sizes. If you made a small one, it's going to be harder. If you carve through, that's harder. Okay, and if you carve in harder wood, that's harder. So all of those are, I should say, more difficult as opposed to harder. So if you choose a harder wood, the carving is going to be more difficult and more interesting and more challenging. And it's all about trying to challenge ourselves and be better carvers. So, till next time, carve safe.